Hi, my name is Michelle, but you can call me Mish. Welcome to episode 1 of my podcast called Something from Everything. This podcast is about our self-love and our personal growth journey. For episode 1, I think it's important to just introduce the concept of self-love and why it is so crucial in everybody's lives. Here I'm going to outline 3 big lessons that I learned this year on self-love, and I promise you will be able to relate to each and every one of them. So I'm big on listening to podcasts, and every single morning I listen to some sort of motivational speaker. But to my surprise, I realized that there's not enough content talking about self-love. Even when I try and explain the concept to my family and friends of what I want to make a podcast about, I say self-love and they say, what is that? So here I will break down what that means and why everybody needs to make it more of a priority in their life. Just a bit of a backstory on me. I started 2023 newly single. I had just left a relationship that I spent the last 6 years thinking it was going to be my final one that leads to marriage. It was a very difficult decision to walk away from that relationship, as it was with someone who I love and admire beyond words, but it was time. And so it's important to note that I started my year by choosing me. I started my year knowing that my happiness, my peace, my mental and physical well-being was my number one priority, and I needed to protect it at all costs. I was no longer going into the year thinking of me, my partner, and the big picture. I was now going into my year thinking, wow, I haven't been alone, truly alone, since 2016. This is the first opportunity I have to look at a year ahead and say, what is important to me? What are my goals? How will I make myself happy this year? Those thoughts made me feel selfish. And so I started reflecting, and I realized that from a young age, I have been taught by society that if I put others before myself, it makes me a good person. My family raised me to be selfless and to always be a loving and dependable person, which at times means we need to put those we love in front of ourselves. And I'm sure this is something you can relate to. So don't you worry, because I have a whole other episode coming out where I dive even deeper into that. But this is the ideology that so many of us have. And so naturally in my relationships, I often fell into that trap. Relationships are a place where we are taught we have to sacrifice our own happiness in life for the other. But in fact, that is so untrue, and I'm here to prove it. Because if we don't fill up our own cup and we don't take care of ourselves first, then we cannot be there to serve others, whether it be our partner, our children, our friends, or our family. I will add that for a healthy relationship, you need to be number 1, and your partner does need to be number 2, your next biggest priority after yourself. But we need to get out of this mindset that we are not our own number 1, because we absolutely are. We cannot depend on anyone in this world to put our needs before theirs. We need to be the ones to take care of ourselves and love ourselves first. Otherwise, we are just 2 people self-sacrificing our own happiness for the other person out of love. But if we truly love each other, we wouldn't want that. So, lesson number 1 is to love yourself first. That was the first major realization that I had this year. And when I learned it, I was feeling strong and ready to take on what was to come. I reminded myself that I have always had such confidence and love in myself since I was a little girl. And that's something my parents instilled in me. And it's a blessing because it's taught me to be independent and remain secure in myself in all times, especially after a breakup. So here I was at the start of this year, newly single, ready to love myself first. And right away, I'm being told by everyone not to worry that my relationship ended because I will meet someone else. What? Why is that the next thing I need to hear? I thought, that's not what this is about. It's not about leaving one relationship to just get back into another. That's not what I need right now. I never saw leaving my relationship as an opportunity to get into a new one. Instead, I saw it as an opportunity to fully put the focus back on myself. I have full confidence that one day I will meet someone else, and so will he, because we are 2 great people, and just because it didn't work out with each other, it doesn't mean it's not going to work out in general. But why is it that right after we get out of a relationship, everyone is so concerned about the next one we're going into? Why is it that people want you to cry it out quick and then go on dates or get on those apps and put yourself out there? I don't care what age you're at or what stage you are in your life, after ending a relationship, you need time to heal and focus on yourself. When one door closes, the next one isn't right in front of it, right? You usually have to walk down a hallway in order to get there, don't you? Going from room to room in our house, we are walking, we're not running. Why are we running all of a sudden? Pump the brakes. I thought, I do not need anyone or anything right now other than myself. And that's one thing I put my foot down about. I do not need to seek love, validation, or care from anybody other than myself right now. I need to heal. So now we're nearing the end of January, and I knew Valentine's Day was around the corner, and I could already feel all the pity from all the people who knew I was newly single. And I didn't want that, because I wasn't upset about being alone on Valentine's Day. I was sad about not having that person with me, but replacing that person with another person doesn't fill that void. I knew that I needed to enjoy this Valentine's Day on my own and for myself. And that if I wasn't getting the love that I wanted from the person I was with because we were no longer together, I was going to give that love and more to myself. Because of this, I started a series on TikTok that I called 14 Days of Self-Love. And I did it for the 14 days leading up to Valentine's Day, where the grand finale was Valentine's Day itself. I planned each and every day and made it a point that no matter how busy I was with work or life, that I would find the time in the day to do something loving for myself. I did this so that I could give the love, care, and admiration to myself that I used to get in my relationship. I realized during this journey that it was so important that I give it to myself anyways and not just receive it from my partner. When I'm in a relationship, I give credit to myself for being the type of person who still takes care of my needs, still takes the time for my family and friends, and I still remain very much independent. However, I was able to look back and reflect on the fact that there were often times where I was guilty of putting my needs, my mental health, my physical health, my happiness on the back burner so that I can always be there for my partner first. We are all guilty of doing that. We say to ourselves that there's not enough time in the day because of the people we have to take care of, or we say their needs are more important than ours, which sometimes can be true. But I'm not talking about those emergency situations where we need to kick into high gear and be there for someone else. I'm talking about your day-to-day, and there's no excuse in your day-to-day routine to not carve out some time for yourself. I hear from people all the time, well, you don't understand. I'm a wife, or I'm a husband, or I'm a mother, a father, a CEO, a caregiver. I don't have time for myself. Wait. Let's flip that. So you're telling me that you're not only responsible for taking care of yourself, but you're responsible for taking care of you, maybe your partner, maybe 2 children, maybe 10 children, maybe your parents, your employees, whatever you have going on, and you're not taking care of yourself? Again, let's go back to that cup of water. If you're not pouring yourself a full cup to the rim, then you're not giving everybody the best that you can give them anyways. You're giving everyone a tiny little sip and then you're leaving yourself dry. That doesn't benefit you or the people you love. And that wouldn't make you happy or them. So going back to my 14 days of self-love, this was such an incredible 2 weeks because every single day I found time that I previously thought wasn't there. We think we are so busy with our day-to-day lives, but when we actually say to ourselves, okay, today we need to set out this time and do something, even if it takes 5 minutes, we can find it. I did it for 2 weeks, and every day I came up with different ideas. For example, day 1 was just as simple as taking a bath. The next day, I did a yoga session. Then I did a paint night by myself. Then I went on a nice mental health walk to one of my favorite places, and then I ordered my favorite meal. All of these things, no matter how small or big, are expressions of self-love. They are all things that I would do for someone else in a heartbeat if I cared about them. But when it's time for us, we give it up. No, I realized I needed to give that to myself first. And we always say, oh wow, you made my day. Well, why don't you make your own day? And then anything anyone else does on top of it is just a bonus. Believe me, it was really empowering each and every day doing these things for myself and not sitting around and waiting for someone else to do them for me. The song about buying your own flowers had just come out and it was so fitting. Everyone was sending it to me thinking it was going to give me some sort of liberation because I was newly single. But it wasn't about that. It was liberating because I was in such an empowering time of taking care of myself. And so to honor this, I dedicated one of the days to buying myself flowers. Again, something so small, but made such a big impact. It was such a validating experience. I went to my local flower shop, and when I got there, the woman asked me who I'm buying them for, because it is so assumed that if I'm buying flowers, it must be for someone else. That in itself is the exact reason why self-love is so important and why more people need to start talking about it. When I told her they were for myself, she was quite surprised, and then I asked her to wrap them nicely for me. She could not comprehend why I would be wrapping them nicely if I'm just going to take them home and put them into a vase. But when we buy flowers for other people, don't they just do that exact same thing? So why not go the extra mile and do that to make myself feel just as good? I later explained to the lady at the flower shop what I was doing, and she loved the idea. I think I got some wheels turning in her own head, and I think that's the whole point of all of this. It's something we don't think about often enough, but when we do, it becomes a bit of a head scratcher. I walked out of that flower shop with the biggest smile on my face, and I had about a 15-minute walk home where I was just like looking down at these flowers and smiling. People in the streets were definitely looking at me thinking that someone must have given those to me and made my day. But again, it was all me. and my self-love. I was out buying groceries anyways, and this was just one extra stop. So, lesson number 2 is that you can always find the time to do something loving for yourself. On one of the last days of my challenge, I decided to take up one of my friends on an offer to do a photo shoot. He's a professional photographer here in Toronto, and he previously reached out to do a shoot with me. We shared some ideas back and forth and made the whole shoot based on my self-love. We even did a series where I was covered in sunflowers, my all-time favorite flower, and it was a little homage to the song. For the rest of the photos, I put some lingerie on, I put my favorite jeans, and just did things that made me happy. Again, I walked out of that shoot with the biggest smile on my face too. Every single thing I was doing during these 14 days just made me happy, and that was the whole point. But now, let's get into what the next lesson was. So, I will say that my favorite part of this whole photo shoot is that I surprised my mom with some photos. Because when my mom was a little girl, she used to be in school in Morocco, and she used to write on her chalkboard, Je m'aime, which in French means I love myself. How cute. So this is something that my mom always taught me from a young age and always spoke to me about. We actually made a trip out to Morocco a few years ago, and she wrote it again on that very same chalkboard. Since then, my mom has started a company with that name and has been working on a clothing line. But with where she is in her life right now as a mother, a wife, a grandmother, and so many other things, of course her own goals are where? You guessed it, on the back burner. So I felt as though she needed a little reminder of her own message. The night before the shoot, I took one of her shirts that said Je m'aime, and I wore it in these photos. We dedicated a whole chunk of photos to this theme, and they turned out incredible. If you're interested, you can find them on my Instagram at @comewithmish. These photos were a little gift to my mom to show her that I have been listening all these years, and I too grew up to love myself because of what she has taught me. When my mom saw the photos and her original concept come to life, it was emotional because I, her daughter, was continuing her legacy and teaching her a lesson that she had already taught me my whole life. We are all guilty of having to relearn lessons. In fact, this is a lesson I too have had to learn multiple times. I distinctly remember when I was in high school, I wanted to get a tattoo of Mish, my nickname, right here on my finger. I was too scared to get a tattoo at the time, so I got a ring engraved, a ring that I still wear to this day. At the time, I was only a teenager, but I had different groups of friends in different places and always felt like I was living a double life alone. I realized in all of this that the only person who's consistent with me and everything that I do is myself. The only person that will be there for me through thick and thin, from the day I'm born to the day I die, is myself. And so I needed to be my own best friend. What an amazing lesson to learn at such a young age. But after wearing that ring for almost 5 years straight, it somehow ended up in the back of my drawer. Life changes and new milestones and new roles arise. So this became something that I too needed to relearn myself. So lesson number 3 is go easy on yourself, because we will all go through chapters in our life where we get so consumed that we need a reminder to take care of ourselves again. Now, I finished that last and final night of my Valentine's Day series on my own. I made myself a beautiful and romantic dinner, and I really took the time in these 2 weeks to date myself and be there for myself. And I found this whole experience very healing, empowering, and loving. Thanks to nobody but myself. But this whole concept is not to say that we don't need a relationship or we don't need a partner or friends or family, because we absolutely do. We are humans having a human experience. We were brought to this earth to have human connections and relationships. What it is to say is that the most important relationship that we can have is with ourselves. We cannot give to others what we do not have ourselves. There is a reason why people say you can't fill someone else's cup unless you have something in your own. Because imagine having a glass that's empty and offering it to somebody who's thirsty. That's not very helpful. So, on this self-love journey, I want you to love yourself first. I want you to find the time in your day to make sure that you pour some water in your own glass. And I want you to forgive yourself in times where you forget that. Follow along for more episodes like these. And if you listen to this podcast until the end, then you've already done something loving for yourself today. Subscribe to this podcast, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and follow me on TikTok and Instagram for more self-love content. Bye.